Hey, good morning and Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes of Israel, scattered abroad and believers in Yeshua Messiah. Good morning to you. This is Living Manna Church. I am Pastor Dave Sain, Senior Shepherd at Living Manna Church. You are part of our Hidden Manna. We are so grateful that you chose to hang out with us this morning. I hope that you're having a really, really good morning. And we got a little technical thing we're dealing with right here, but it's Shabbat morning. We got a great conversation for you. And to help me in this conversation, are we ready for him? All right. To help me in this conversation, we have my dear brother. There he is. Brother Max, hey, man. What's going on?
Hey, brother. Shabbat Shalom, man.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. PM had to come in here and quickly, dazzle me with his technical skills and fix a little thing that snuck up on us.
Thanks, PM.
Yes, thanks, PM. We all say thank you. Everybody say thank you to PM. All right.
Awesome. Beautiful day today.
Yeah, you guys have a nice day. It's kind of wet, gray out here, but weather, temperature-wise, it's cool. Not cool. It's nice. We had a beautiful day yesterday. Spring sprung. We were in the 70s. Yep. So enjoying it. That's one of the things I love about living in the Northeast. That change of from one season to another. So then again, would I actually mind if it was 70 degrees the whole year round? At my age now, probably not so much. I'd probably like that.
Yeah, I like upper 70s, so at least we can swim, right? I like to go swimming.
Swimming. Actually, you know what? I haven't done it in a while, and I normally don't do this unless I'm hanging out with our brother. I'm hanging out with Bob. Obviously, you know who our brother is, but for everybody else, golf. Haven't golfed in a long time, and so looking forward to some good weather. Maybe me and PM go out and golf and.
I don't know, with all that working out you're doing, you might be tearing that ball apart now, huh?
We'll see.
Yeah, right?
If I do, I'll put it on video and post it.
Like, what was that? Happy Gilmore? Remember that movie?
Oh, my goodness. Happy Gilmore. That's not a golf movie. Anyway, good morning to everybody. I want to say, before we jump into anything today, I want to give Brother Che a shout out this morning and say happy birthday to you, man. Today he's celebrating his 41st birthday, and we just want to send our love to you, brother. Everybody online too, if you guys give him a happy birthday, I know he'd appreciate that. We hope an awesome day for you in Yah, and many more to come. So happy birthday to you, bro.
That's right. Happy birthday, buddy.
All right, so we didn't get a chance to get together last week, and hopefully you guys are all feeling better. A certain
person had a bug. Yeah.
Yep. Hopefully you guys are all feeling better.
Thank you. Yes.
We are in the Passover season, and it's just a couple of weeks away right now. Mm-hmm. And if you've been following, which I know you have, but I'm kind of just talking to everybody else out there that might be watching. If you've been following what we've been doing for the last, I don't even know how many months it's been. We've been going through the year ministry of the Master. Mm-hmm. I tried to time it where we would be talking about the Passover just a couple of weeks before the actual Passover, so it's fresh in our mind. We understand what the story is that's going on. Maybe see some of the hidden things that are there, because there are hidden things. We're going to share some hidden manna with you guys today as well. But so we're in that part of the story, and I think it was it last week? I think it was last week that or the week before, where we talked about John 13. And
2 Sundays ago.
Sundays ago, right? So 2 Sundays ago. It's hard. I can't even remember.
No, I hear you, buddy.
Excuse me. So I wanted us, and I brought up during an actual, a weekend message, that there's a controversy, at least in the English as we read it, right? Mm. There's a controversy as to whether the Last Supper is the Passover supper or something else. Mm-hmm. And I didn't give too much, really. I didn't really go into it in depth, because I know I wanted rather to talk about it here, where we can actually maybe get into the conversation and really open it up and try to find out what the truth actually is. But let me preface all of this by saying this is to the best of our understanding. Mm-hmm. And I know, we're going to read some texts that say things, and you're going to be like, well, wow, it says it there. And then we're going to read some other text that say exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
And so
and I think it's not that it's important, but also the question arises sometimes when we do, Yah Supper, people question us, why do you do it? Because that
yeah,
was unleavened bread. So I think this is going to also clarify, right, some of those issues, like I said, in our opinion.
yeah. So and good. Preface it as our opinion, but you're right. It's gonna. I'm just jotting something down here. It's going to clarify. I hope it's going to clarify for some. What you just said, the issue of what we call doing the Lord's Supper. And remember, I think I said it this maybe last week. It's not the Eucharist, right? Forget about that. It's not even communion. Forget about that stuff. That's got nothing to do with it. I really do think that this is a separate and intricate ceremony initiated for what would be the new covenant. But we'll get into that in just a minute. So, Father, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that is willing to obey. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. I see people coming in on the chat. We had a great conversation yesterday. That was a lot of fun. Good to see some
the Zoom call was good, yeah.
To see some of our LMC family. And let's jump right into this. We can do some commercials later on. John chapter 13 is kind of where I want us to start off, right? Because this really is an important question. And it's something that we should we should really take a close look at. And I know there's people that fall on either side of this, but I think when you really think this through, and unless you actually keep the Passover or attempt to keep the Passover, attempt to do what Yah has instructed to do, once you attempt to do it, it makes more sense. You begin to understand what the writers are saying and what they're referring to, versus saying, well, yeah, we're just going to read the text and it says this is what it says and that's what it is. But you've never celebrated Passover. You've never taken the time to go through all the things that it says to do. So you definitely get a benefit in understanding, as it is with everything in Yah's word. That's how He teaches us: do first. Right? Do. Exactly. Be obedient first. And with obedience comes understanding. We've been talking about Psalms 119 in Morning Manna for a while. And the psalmist says that over and over and over. I obeyed. I did. I put it in my heart. And then he says, and I gained understanding. Then I gained wisdom. And that really is the process that through which Yah teaches us. And I'm experiencing it in my life. Hopefully everybody else is experiencing it in their life. Once you decide to be obedient, then wisdom comes, then understanding, then all of a sudden things that you're reading start to make sense, because you're like, well, wait a minute. I know this is what we've always said, but that's not the way it was supposed to be. That's not the way it was said by Moses. Exactly. So let's do this. John chapter 13, and let me pop this up, and hopefully everybody can see this, and no glitches here. Oh, glitch. We lost you, Brother Max, but I'm going to keep this up just for a second so we can read it. And then,
no problem.
And then we can hear you. I can hear you.
Good.
But I lost your picture there for a second, but that's okay. We'll come back to it. This is just for the scripture. Here's John chapter 13 and verse 1. And it says, and I'm just going to highlight it for everybody. So this is, let me read it, and then we'll do context together. And before the festival of the Pesach, the Passover. And again, and before the festival of the Passover, Yeshua, knowing that his hour had come, that he should move out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. All right. And then, of course, as it goes on, in fact, I'm going to pop there one more time just for another verse, because I think verse 2 is also important. It says, and the supper taking place. So at that Last Supper is what's going on. And when is the Last Supper going on? Before the Passover. Okay, so that's John. And let me get you back up there. Okay, I got you again. So that's John, right? And so that's kind of been our premise that we've been talking about on weekend messages. And John is, don't forget, John is, his purpose for writing the gospel is to be very, very detailed to make a point, right? At the end it says, these things were written so that you might believe that Yeshua is Messiah, the Elohim, that he is the Elohim, the Mashiach. And so he's writing with, trying to make it very, very clear. Everything he gives us, every miracle he gives us, every expression he gives us is found in the Torah. Everything. He follows the Exodus in everything he does. He goes through Messiah's teachings that follow the Exodus story. And so all of a sudden we get here to Passover. He's still doing it. He's still following that Exodus story. And so the question is, if John is telling us that the Last Supper, what we traditionally call the Last Supper or the Lord's Supper, happens the night before Passover, that means a lot. Now, of course, there are some there's a controversy here, and let me see if I can pop it up. What is it? Mark chapter 14.
Yes, verse 12.
Mark chapter 14, and here is, excuse me, here's verse 12. I'm going to lose you for a second, just so everybody knows, but they'll still be able to hear you, so you can commentate. Here is verse 12. So here's Mark's rendition, in the English. It says, and on the first day of unleavened bread, when they were slaughtering the Passover lamb, his taught one said to him, where do you wish us to go and prepare for you to eat the Pesach? Now, just off the bat, just reading that.
There should be alarms going off.
Yeah, alarms are going off, as soon as I read that. Because, number one, you do not slaughter any lambs on the first day of unleavened bread. That's done. That's finished. That's over.
Right.
There is no more slaughtering of the lambs. So that's a big question mark, right? As to, and I'm not saying as to the validity of the scripture, but as to the validity of the translation.
Because at that point, the meal should be eaten, because it's in between, right? It's between both Passover and unleavened. So the meal is being taken place at that time. So you can't be prepping it.
You can't be prepping it. And the Passovers, or the lambs are actually killed on the Passover. So I know we call the Passover very often. It's just called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But they're not actually the same feast. There's two different events that are going on there. One is that Passover that gets killed just before the unleavened bread festival starts, and that's when you're eating the Passover. So it's already dead. They have to be slaughtered prior to that. So, and we'll talk more about this because there's more in this text than meets the eye. But let's just take it for what it says. If you're reading this and you've never celebrated Passover, or you haven't really studied the order of events that occur, in Exodus and Deuteronomy and in other places where the Passover is spoken about, you could read this and it sounds like, it doesn't sound like it's actually telling us that that first day of unleavened bread is when they went to go get this place to eat the Passover in, and then that night they eat the Passover. But listen, this isn't the only place there's controversies like this. No. Right? There's many other places in the text that we have found out, over the years, that what it says in the English, or maybe what the scribes put in, sometimes purposefully, sometimes accidentally, or how
right.
the translators translated it, sometimes purposefully, sometimes accidentally. For instance, we talked about as we went through the Gospel of John, you have the order of all of the all of the feast days, starting in the beginning of John, the acceptable year of the Lord, Passover, and then of course the unleavened bread, and then after that Sukkot, and then after that comes Tabernacles. Sorry, guys. And you have interjected, I think it's like John chapter 6, you have interjected in the middle of John as Messiah is going back to Jerusalem, that he's going back to Jerusalem for a Passover. And that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit the order of things. But you wouldn't be aware of that unless you actually celebrate it. And of course, that's the whole idea of the whole 3.5 year ministry. That's one of the verses they look at. But it can't be.
I just want to interject too. Also, I think while everyone at home has John chapter 13 open, if you go to skip over to verse 18 through 30,
let me pop
there's
it
some
up.
there's some other clues there that should start to make your head be like, what? Can't be,
Okay, let me go over to John chapter 13 one more time, and all the way down to verse 18. Yeah, this is really important stuff too. 18 all the way through 30. You got a Bible open there, brother?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and read that, and I'll pop it up on the screen for everybody to see.
Okay, and this is during the supper, or before. It says, "I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but the scripture might be fulfilled. He who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me." We all know he's talking about Judas, right? He says, "Now I say to you, before it takes place, that when it does take place, you shall believe that I am. Ooh. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me." When Yeshua had said this, he was troubled in the spirit and witnessed and said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, one of you shall deliver me up." The taught ones looked at one another, doubting of whom he spoke. And one of his taught ones, whom Yeshua loved, was reclining on the bosom of Yeshua. Simon Kepha when then motioned to him and asked, "Who is it of us whom you speak?" And leaning back on the breast of Yeshua, he said to him, "Master, who is it?" And Yeshua answered, "It is he whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it." And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Yehuda from Korath, son of Simon. And after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. And Yeshua therefore said to him, "What you do, do quickly." But none at the table knew why he said this to him. For some were supposing, this is the key right here, I think 29. For some were supposing, because Yehuda had the money bag, that Yeshua was saying to him, "Buy what we need for the festival," or that he should give somewhat to the poor. And then 30 says, so having received a piece of bread, he then went out straight away, and it was night.
Yeah,
So
a lot there to unpack. Go ahead, do it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we all know this is a high Sabbath, right? Who would be buying and selling in the middle of Jerusalem? Why would the disciples think he was going to buy? And what is it? Not only buy, but what they needed for the festival, right? We all know that this is stuff that's prepped way before we, and then also, what was it? Go ahead. Let me talk while I look this up.
Go ahead, talk.
Brain fart. But yeah, well, the bread too. I'm sorry. I wanted to bring up the bread issue. Not only here, we see that the piece of bread that's being talked about when Yeshua breaks the bread and Satan entered Judas. There's many scriptures that show unleavened bread in the New Testament. We're not going to talk about, in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, that unleavened bread is referenced as adzymos, or Azymos, and that's strong. The Greek 106. So unleavened bread in the New Testament is clarified as azymos. The bread referenced in every account during the Last Supper is artos, which is G74. So there's a distinction here that we know in all the accounts of Deuteronomy, when Yah tells us how to do the Passover, it needs to be unleavened bread. So I can see on one account, but on every scripture reference in the New, because I know people say, well, it could have been changed from the Old to New, but in the New Testament, regular bread is artos, and that's in every reference of the Last Supper. So from Mark, in Matthew, and in Luke, it's literally artos. So they're using leavened bread in this dinner.
Yeah, that would be obviously a big no.
Yeah.
No. That's a great point. That's an amazing point. And I think it connects to something else, again, hidden, big,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just amazing. Plus, again, if you have celebrated Passover before, like you just said, you know that it's a high Sabbath.
Yeah.
What you cannot do. Listen, I guess maybe, if you were, amongst the nations like we are today, could you technically, I mean, do you have the ability, not that you should do it, but do you have the ability on Passover night to go out and buy something? Well, yeah, I mean, it's there. You can go do it. We shouldn't. And those that celebrate Passover should know that we do not buy or sell.
And bro, this is in front of the master.
Yeah.
right in front of you, Elohim himself. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go break the Passover right now, right in front of you.
Right. Which
the disciples thought nothing that was funny with that. Yeah.
Which would then make him complicit in breaking the instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Peter would have been like, "Bro, sit down. What are you doing? What are you doing?"
that has big ramifications to it. If in fact they did that. But again, unless you celebrate the Passover, you don't know that. So you could read that and just skirt right over it and not realize how important those verses are. Context. Remember, again, just drill it into people over and over and over again. Context. And the context here is if this is Passover, there's a big problem. A big problem. But great catch on that word artos, and it's 7. I think it's a 74. It's 740 in the Strong, 740 in your Greek Strongs. And you guys can look that up for yourselves.
In case my New York 4. 740.
74. 233. All right. So just in that context of what's going on here, this raises this confirms actually what John says in verse 1. This was before the Passover, not the actual night of the Passover. Now there's some other text that we already read, Mark 14. We're going to go back to Mark 14. But let's look at Luke 22, because there's, here's another one of those texts. Luke chapter 22, and I'm going to actually go from verse 1, because it's verse 1 all the way to verse 7. And again, it just when you understand, it raises some red flags. So let me pop this up real quick. It says, and the festival of matzah, unleavened bread, drew near, which is called Pesach. And it is. I mean, very often people refer to Passover and of unleavened bread as...
Yeah, they lump it together.
Yeah,
no pun.
That was good, bro. That was good. They lump it together. Is it a new lump? An unleavened lump? Very good. It says, and the chief priest and the scribes were seeking how to kill him, for they feared the people. So here it is, the great festival, right? And what are the chief priests doing? They're plotting murder. These guys, I'm telling you, man, I do not want to be standing next to them on the day of judgment.
Nope.
It's going to be bad. I don't even want to be within like a half a mile of them. It says, and Satan entered Judah. So we now can connect this with what we just read in John, right? Because he's talking about the same event. Satan enters Judah, who was numbered with the 12, and he went and spoke with the chief priests, the captains, how he might deliver him up to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him silver. And he promised as, and excuse me, and was seeking an occasion to deliver him up away from the crowd. The day of unleavened bread came when the Pesach had to be slaughtered. Now, when you read this in context, see, a lot of people read this and it sounds like he's saying that this all happened on the day the Passover had to be slaughtered. But if you read this carefully, what he's saying is the festival drew near. Doesn't tell us how near. Doesn't tell us if it's a day. We now know it's the day before. But what it does tell us is that as the festival drew near, let's now put in what John says, they were eating that supper. And then Satan entered into Judah, into Judas, who went to the high priest, right, that night, after he eats the bread, goes to the high priest that night, comes up with this deal, the 30 pieces of silver. And what happens that next day? And the day of unleavened bread came when the Passover had to be slaughtered. The next day was the beginning of the festival. Again, when you lump it all together, the festival of unleavened bread. But that's the day when the Pesach had to be slaughtered. So if you read this in its timeline correctly, in context, again, if you read it in context, this is telling us something no different than what John told us.
Yep.
I hope everybody can see that, because this is really, really good. And brother Paul made a neat note. He says Passover is not a high Sabbath, but the first day of unleavened bread is the high Sabbath. But the difference between Passover and the day of unleavened bread, you eat the Passover between the evenings.
Between the evenings, yeah. So it literally goes into unleavened bread.
It goes right into unleavened bread. By the time you're done with your meal, in fact, as you're eating your meal, you are celebrating unleavened bread. It is the beginning of the first day of unleavened bread.
I think it pays to go to Deuteronomy 16, right? You want to just do 1 through 8? Want me to pull it up and read it while you're doing that?
Well, you know what? I'll put us both on the screen. You just go ahead and read it, and everybody can follow us along. Deuteronomy 16, everybody, verses 1 through 8. Hopefully you guys got your Bible. I don't want to take Max off the screen, so you guys can follow us, and let me just put it up here on mine as well.
Okay. I'll start it off. Verse 1, chapter 16. Guard the new moon of Abib and perform the Pesach to Yah, your Elohim. For in the new moon of Abib, Yah, your Elohim, brought you out of Mitzrayim by night. You shall slaughter the Pesach to Yah, your Elohim, from the flock of the herd in the place where Yah chooses to put his name. Eat no unleavened bread with it. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction, because you came out of the land of Mitzrayim in haste, so that you remember the day in which you came out of the land of Mitzrayim all the days of your life. Eat no leaven, and no leaven should be seen with you in all your border for 7 days. Neither should any of the meat which you slaughter in the evening on the first day stay all night until morning. You are not allowed to slaughter the Pesach within any of your gates which Yah your Elohim gives you, but at the place where Yah your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell. There you slaughter the Pesach in the evening at the going down of the sun at the appointed time you came out of Mitzrayim. You shall roast and eat it in the place which Yah your Elohim chooses, and in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. 6 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there is a closing festival to Yah your Elohim. You do no work.
Okay. So that night, if after they eat the meal, he sends out Judas, it's already unleavened bread. It's already a high Sabbath. And that would be the issue. And of course, again, it doesn't fit the actual instruction from Moses But I do want to again emphasize what we just read in Luke. If you take the time to read it without just with understanding John, Luke is actually verifying what John said.
Mm-hmm.
That from the time that Satan enters him to the time that it gets to the priest, and on the next day, that next evening, because it's already the next evening, it's already the 14th, and that afternoon, Yeshua will be sacrificed, and that's really the key here,
Mm-hmm.
because if Messiah is the Passover lamb, which he emphatically is, right? I mean, what is it? 1 Corinthians 5, I think it's 5:7. I'm thinking 5:7. But somebody can check me on that, or 5:17. I think it's 5:7. But somebody can check that out and remind us of that. But Shaul explicitly says Yeshua is our Passover.
Mm-hmm.
The problem then is if it was a Passover meal that they were eating, it would have meant that the Passover would have already had to have been slain, because he's eating the symbol of himself.
Yeah.
That's the context there. He would have been eating the symbol of himself. And if that's true, then that messes up everything.
Mm-hmm.
It messes up the whole schedule of the feast days. Because if it was the 14th of Nisan, that day when they ate the Passover, and now it's already going into the evening, and the Passover lamb was already killed, and that means that would have been the 14th. And then the next day, and there's offerings every day at the temple, because I've read some stuff where people say, well, there's a Chabad offering, there's another lamb offering. Of course there is like every day there's an offering, but Messiah is the Passover lamb. Why would and if he's not the Passover lamb, if he doesn't die on Nisan the 14th, in between the evenings, then our whole concept of first fruits.
That year it all lined up perfect, right? Because then he would have threw off the whole thing.
It throws off first fruits, and then after first fruits, then it throws off all the calendar. And so it is so important that because he is the Passover, that he dies on Avi. We keep saying Nisan, but it's the 14th of the first month. Okay, so but there's more. There's absolutely more here that I think is.
Let's also remember too, right? When Yeshua is brought in to Herod, what does Herod say to the right? It's the custom on the festival to release a criminal, right? To give him back to the people, and who do they choose, right?
Right. It was the custom on the Passover. So that day they would be slaughtering the Passover. And of course, we know the story. Messiah dies at about 3 p.m. at the moment that the Passover lamb. And again, guys, in the celebration of the Passover, there's only really one Passover lamb, at least in Jerusalem, right? Everybody's eating the lamb, the offering that they brought, and it gets brought to the altar, it gets slaughtered, it gets bled, you get it back, you take it home. And that's a process that took, a long time to do. You can't, what do they say, 250,000 lambs, wind up getting slaughtered. That took some time. So all of that's going on, but it is the last lamb that really winds up to be the Passover lamb. That's the lamb that the high priest picked some 4 days earlier when the master rides into Jerusalem. The high priest is also kind of walking into Jerusalem with the lambs following him and holding on to what would be the Passover lamb.
Yeah, that's right. When he came in with all the other lambs. Yeah.
So, but I think there's also I mean, if we think this out, because again, you read Mark, and it does kind of sound like that's the issue. So I think there's one of two possibilities here. One is that it was the Passover, right? Mark's correct. It was the Passover. And we've all been mistaken. And again, that just has all sorts of other problems that are attached to it. And I think that's one of the reasons why when it comes to the Lord's Supper, if we not communion, not Eucharist, but the Lord's Supper, that we often attach it to, well, that's only something you're supposed to do once a year, because it says, whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup. Well, if it is the Passover meal, well, then I could say, I would agree. I would say, okay, yeah, then it should just be that one time a year. But if it's not, what he's actually saying is, whenever you sit down, to have a meal, remember this. Remember what's about to happen.
Yep. And I know that you want to touch in a couple of minutes on the real hidden manna, but I don't know if you wanted to bring up the chronological gospels.
Oh, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
The commentary that we have from Brother Michael Rood.
Yeah, Rood does a good job. Have you heard anything about Rood? 'Cause I know he had a stroke, and I haven't seen him. I mean, I really haven't watched any of his stuff in a long time.
I know once in a blue moon when I do see some of his, on my recommended views on YouTube, he's not there. There's people in place, which, just to let you know, brother, I know he's not watching, but we miss him.
Yeah, I do. He's definitely rude. He's got a good name. Yeah. He definitely has a good name, but no, man, the guy was a pioneer. He was plowing the field way before many other people were plowing the field. And listen, like all of us, does he get stuff wrong? Do we get stuff wrong? We all do.
Yeah, exactly. None of us are perfect. Yeah,
none of us got this thing down pat.
The first time I saw him was actually even before I came to Torah. I remember seeing him speaking with, oh my goodness, the defense minister, Reggie White. Reggie White actually a couple of years before he died came to the truth, because we all know he was a Baptist minister, and he said he would get sick of just preaching the same message in every city for years, and then real fast on a flight home one day he saw Michael Rood on TV. I don't know how, but and it just hit his heart. Yah must have been speaking to him, and he started to study with him. And he came to the knowledge of Torah, and all the people that knew his life said that was the first time they saw a real change. This is a Christian, right, a pastor, but they saw the real change when he came to the truth. And the last couple of years, he dedicated his life to just literally, learning the word of Yah from, the truth. So it was pretty cool. And that's the first thing I ever saw of Michael Rood. So
yeah, I remember seeing that. I remember Reggie White. I remember, other ministers, family members that were always bragging about him. You got to have Reggie White come. He's got to come. And then when you hear his testimony, he's like, I just kept preaching the same thing. I didn't mean it. It was just, it was the thing you wanted to hear. I talked about football and all this bragging about having the man. And yet his testimony becomes, I didn't even know the truth.
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't know the truth. And yet he was one of the big, circuit preachers, so to speak.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to watch it, all you got to do is on YouTube, just Google, in the search, put, Reggie White with Michael Rood, and you can watch it yourself. But he has a book, The Chronological Gospels. I don't know if anyone, there's a little plug for him.
You got the big one. I got the small one.
And on page 221, he gives a summary, and there's do you have the book in front of you too, bro?
Yeah, I got it right in front of me.
There's that one word. What is that?
Domicile. Domicile.
Okay.
A room.
All right. I knew that. I was just testing you to see if you knew.
I think your lump has leaven.
Oh, man. All right. So he has a summary preparation for the Passover. And it says, preparations began on the 9th day of Aviv and continued through the late afternoon on the 14th. A rented upstairs apartment in Jerusalem, the upper room, was prepared for Passover and for the extended domicile, there we go, through the Feast of Shavuot. This parenthetical summary details where the Last Supper would take place, not when the preparation was made. The night in which the Last Supper occurred was the last evening in which leaven could be consumed. This is also the disciples' first night in Jerusalem after spending the previous weeknights in Bethany on Mount of Olives. And I'll let you touch up on really what the correct translation in Mark 14 should be.
Yeah, so let's the point he's making here is paramount. It's really, 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 really important. And let me see if I'm going to go back to Mark real quick so everybody can see it again. and then and then compare it. That's Mark chapter 14 and verse 12. And we just finished looking at this. It says, and the first day, let me pop this up for everybody again. And the first day of unleavened bread, when they were slaughtering the Pesach lambs, his taught one said to him, where do you wish us to go and prepare for you to eat the Passover? So the implication here is, as you're reading it, that it is the first day of unleavened bread. They're slaughtering the Passover lamb so we can eat it tonight. And then, of course, that night, they eat the Passover lamb. Judas betrays him, yada, 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 yada. That next evening, which would actually wind up being the first day of unleavened bread, he then winds up being arrested, and then all the events that follow after that. But as Brother Rude points out, here is I don't have it to put up for everybody, so I'm just going to read it. So this is Mark chapter 14 and verse 12. In its correct context, it says, at the beginning, not on the first day of unleavened bread, at the beginning of the preparations for unleavened bread. This is almost verbatim the same issue that we see in 1 Corinthians. I believe it's 1 Corinthians. We talked about it, I think, on Wednesday, when it says, and on the first day of the week, they were gathered. Paul's talking. The guy falls out the window. All that stuff. He heals them, and people look at that and they say, "Well, it's the first day of the week. It's Monday. It's Sunday, and that's kind of proof that there's a new Sabbath. There's a new Sabbath, and that's the day. There's an assumption made there because it's out of context. And that's not what that story's about. And I think that's very similar to what's going on here. It's not the first day of unleavened bread. It's at the beginning of the preparations for unleavened bread. When they prepared the sacrifice of the Passover, Yeshua's disciples said to him, where will you go? Where will you that we go and prepare that you may eat the Passover? So they're making preparations for when the Passover is coming, but it actually winds up that he doesn't eat the Passover with them. He is the very Passover. So I think that's a really big point.
In the next bracket, right underneath that, it references Matthew 26:17. If you want to read that part too, because it says the King James inaccurately translated the Greek text concerning the protos of the feast.
Yeah, go ahead, just finish reading it. It was good.
Of the feast of unleavened bread, as the first day of the feast of unleavened bread. So the Greek word protos. This is the first day of the feast, is the 15th day of the month of Aviv, or in parentheses Nisan, but that's Babylon. So, which would mean that they had already missed the Passover Seder. The protos, beginning of the preparations for unleavened bread, is the situation of which Yeshua spoke. It takes several days to prepare for the Passover Seder. The disciples were preparing for a Passover at a rented townhouse in Jerusalem. We already discussed that in the beginning. So it's the Greek word protos it's mistranslated.
And again, this happens very, very often in the scripture. And that's why it's so important to go back to the definitions to understand the context that comes out of Moses. That's another thing, because I think you said this, and we say this all the time, and I want to make sure we clarify this for everybody. When we say that, now we follow Torah, because there'll be other people that say, well, I follow Jesus, right? That's kind of the colloquial term that gets used, or that we first understood, and as though there is a contrast to following Torah and a contrast to following Yeshua. And I want to remind everybody, it's accurate to say, yes, we follow Torah, but it is equally as accurate to say we follow Messiah, because he is the living Torah.
Okay.
So I think sometimes that even the way sometimes we term things, we've got to be a little bit careful, because people will take that and say, oh, you're doing something else different other than following following the master. So anyway, Somebody noticed my shirt. Yes, blessed grandpa. You see that? Blessed grandpa. There we go. I am. Oh man, she's beautiful, bro. She is absolutely beautiful. I know it's biased. Everybody thinks their kids are beautiful and smart and talented and all the rest, and they are. But as a grandpa, Bella is beautiful. Anyway, side note,
She
got
is,
nothing to do
yeah.
with anything. Okay, so here's some hidden manna, guys, because we want to give you some hidden manna. It's hidden manna. There's something else going on here, and I've been trying to bring this out in the in the weekend
Sunday.
messages,
Yep.
Sundays, in the weekend messages. I consider them our evangelism messages, our times of teaching. Um, we've if this is as I sincerely believe it is, if this is the day before the actual unleavened bread begins, the day before Passover, because Messiah would have to die on Passover. It is, as we talked about, I think last week or the week before, there's something else going on here. Isaiah, which is such an integral book for people to understand. Isaiah tells us there is a birth of a new nation coming. Jeremiah tells us that there will be one day when Yahweh will make a new covenant or a renewed covenant with both the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And that's, I guess, another little thing we've got to, I think we've sort of kind of quasi gotten it wrong in some of the Hebrew roots terminology, because we always think, well, that was just the house of Judah there. That was just Jews. No, it was the whole house of Israel that was there. There were representatives of the whole house of people from every tribe were there. It may not have been the people that were scattered from the northern house previously, and that is a valid point to make and to understand. But when Yeshua says, I have come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he means the people of Judah, because all of the house of Israel was in Judah. The day he's brought to the temple, there's somebody from different tribes that are there. At the temple that see him as a babe, the woman, the older woman, and Simon, I think the guy's name, they're from different tribes. They're not from Judah. So I think it's a little bit inaccurate, to try to divide it and say, well, he's really coming for just that lost and scattered. No, they were all lost and scattered. Everybody in Judah was lost and scattered. The whole tribe was lost and scattered. Those are the people he's talking to. Messiah tells us there's a faithful son, there's an unfaithful son, right? And the faithful son winds up doing what the father says. In Matthew, he tells us that there's the vine dressers that need to be destroyed in their city and given to a new nation. Well, this new nation is still the house of Israel. This is why Paul tells us later on that not all that are Israel are Israel. That's Romans, I guess, around chapter 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So what's happening is Messiah is preparing to birth. This is what all of Revelation 12 is about, to birth a new nation of the house of Israel, all 12 tribes that believe in Yeshua Messiah and keep the commandments. That's what Revelation 12 is about. So with all of that as a preface, here's the manna. I think I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I was explaining how what he's doing here, the whole washing of the feet,
last week.
you're bathed, you need to be washed continually, is a parallel to what Yah does, or what Moses does through Yah's instruction to the priest, to Aaron and to his sons. Messiah is preparing a priesthood here. He is preparing men to go out and to be his voice, to go out and to share this truth. And we know the Levitical temple and all the rest of that stuff it's gonna be crashed. 40 years later, it's gonna be crashed. So on this night, which again is to the best of my understanding, is the night before the Passover lamb gets killed, it is also the last night of the old covenant. And when you think about it in those terms, prophetically, that's significant. Not only is it the last night of the old covenant, it is also, as Brother Rude, eloquently puts it, it is the last night that you can eat of the old bread.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the last night that you can eat of the barley that has leaven in it. Come the next day, right? Come the next day, unleavened bread begins.
Mm-hmm.
The unleavened meal, a brand new barley comes, or whether it's the wheat or the barley, it's the last day you can eat of it on that night. And I sincerely believe that what Yeshua is doing purposefully on this night is he is initiating a ceremony just like what was initiated through Moses when they made the covenant.
Exodus 24, yeah.
Yeah, this is my word. This is the blood. This is and it's not that what he does that night initiates the new covenant. It is the ceremony that will reflect what will go on the next day, which begins unleavened bread. The leaven gets taken out of the house of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so prophetically, I think that is incredibly significant to the context of the story, which then, kind of validates the idea that Messiah would do this before the Passover, that he would do this ceremony, that he would say, listen, when you sit, this is my body, this is my blood, but it doesn't get initiated. It doesn't get started. The covenant is not paid for until the next day on the Passover, as they're led out of Egypt in ancient days and out of Egypt's sin. And now the new house of Israel, the born again house of Israel, those that keep the testimony and keep the commandments are birthed on that day by the blood and by his body.
I know how you brought up all the similarities in the covenant, from Exodus chapter 24, and another key part also was in verse 4 of Exodus 24. It says that Moses wrote down all the words of Yah and rose up early in the morning and built a slaughter place at the foot of the mountain, and then it says, and 12 standing columns for the 12 tribes of Israel.
Yeah. Yeshua
eats with his disciples. I know that Judas, but still, it's still representing the whole house of Israel.
Yep.
With his 12 disciples. So I think it was pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. Just the analogies are incredible. And tomorrow when we get together, we're gonna explore even more, because something is going to happen to the whole house of Israel, this new nation that is being birthed, that is very different than what happened when it was birthed at the beginning of the first marriage covenant. And I don't want to give away too much, but we're going to get into it tomorrow, and it's going to make a whole lot of sense as to what the position of giving of the Spirit really means and why it is so significant. Because that's what chapter 14 of John is all about. Chapter 15 of John is all about. Chapter 16 of John is all about. While it follows the pattern Messiah is doing, there's new wine. There's it's based on everything that came before. There's a renewed covenant, and he's going to I don't know if fix is the right word, but he's going to empower, I guess is an accurate word, or he's going to comfort us, maybe even a better word, comfort us or empower us to be able to do something that was unsuccessful in the original marriage covenant. And so I think the marriage covenant needs to be distinct, at least the ceremony of it needs to be distinct from the payment of it, which is Passover. But this is the only opportunity he's got to initiate this before he actually dies and pays for the covenant on Passover. So,
yeah, I think that's also in the warning when he tells his disciples that he wanted to eat that, right? He would have loved to have eaten the Pesach with him, right?
Yeah, he would have loved to. Not that I have loved to have. I already ate the Passover with you. Yeah. I would love to have eaten the Passover. Is really the implication of what's being said, if you understand it the way that we're putting it out there. And again, the math is off. If it's any other way, the math is off. The dates are off. So
and that's why whenever in doubt, you go back to the Torah.
So it is
Right.
my humble opinion based on my understanding, or our humble opinion based on our understanding, with the assistance certainly of other teachers and things like that, that that the Lord's Supper as we know it was a monumental event, no
Mm-hmm.
doubt about it, and should be remembered. What's being remembered is that the old covenant is done. The covenant
Mm-hmm.
of death, the covenant of condemnation, as Saul says later on in Corinthians. And now, and this is what we're going to talk about tomorrow, now the covenant of the Spirit has come. And that's what's being initiated this day. The payment for that covenant begins on Passover,
Amen.
the next day. So that's our hidden manna for today. I hope
That's
you
our
guys,
hidden. Any
that is
comments?
the hidden manna, right? That's the truth. We really want you guys to get it, because you really we always have to understand things in the bigger story, in the bigger context. We got to understand, the whole picture. And when you do, man, it's consistent. It's amazing. And there's so much there that we've missed, that we skip over, that never even come to our understanding. But again, it starts with obedience. Be obedient, and then understanding and wisdom comes. And Messiah says it the same way. If he that has a little, he's going to have more, and he'll have an abundance. And we're starting to get, I believe, we're starting to earn some abundance here.
Amen.
So neat stuff, brother. Neat
Yeah.
stuff. Hope
Good
you guys enjoyed
conversation.
that.
Good conversation.
Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. Go through the
It
scriptures.
convinced me.
It convinced you. And this is why Saul says in Corinthians, you need to be a new lump.
Yep.
You need to get rid of the old leaven. You need to get rid of that old barley, all that old stuff. Yeshua says, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. That's over. It's done. Now, it may last in a historical context. It may last another 40 years. But its power, its authenticity, its effect dies that day with Messiah. It dies that day of Passover. And then we become a new lump. And we'll talk about all of that, because all of that, all the idea of getting the leaven out and all that, that's all priest talk. That's all offering talk. And that has such a tremendous ramifications for who we are today and what it means to, not give an offering without leaven. Because we still do. We're still giving offerings, and your offering cannot be without leaven, and it must be salted. And we'll get into all of that maybe another day, because it's really, really important stuff to understanding the Passover. So here we are. We're getting ready for Passover, and the season is upon us. And hopefully you guys got a little bit more clear understanding. Again, I'm just going to preface this the way we understand it, right now today. So go ahead, brother. I'll give you the last word on that.
Just want to let everyone know out there too. It's an honor that I get to, speak with my brother every week, and just to meet, like at the Zoom calls we spoke last night, just to see everybody. And I would never have met any of these people if I didn't have this opportunity on Hidden Manna. So I'm really grateful to Yah that He's given me an opportunity to speak His truth. So I just want to let everyone know, thank you, and thank you for praying for my family last week. And I just want to encourage everyone to pray for each other. And again, our next Zoom call will be April 22nd. So I encourage everyone to come on there. And I know some people, Brother Paul was even mentioning last night, it's great to see everyone. So if anyone's listening that hasn't come on out. You don't have to show your face if you're shy. You can just put your audio on and join us. It's a great time we have to fellowship. But enjoy your Sabbath. I love everyone.
Amen, brother. It's an honor having you, man. It's fun talking with you and exploring Yah's word. Couldn't think of a better friend to do it with. So thank you, brother.
Thank you.
You too, man. Give my blessings to the family. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, everyone. Bye-bye. Love you, buddy.
Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed that discussion. We did. It's fun. It's exciting. It's interesting to look into the Word and try to discover, its meanings and do our best to walk in Torah, to walk in Yeshua Messiah. So don't forget, you guys can sign up for the Passover. If you have the LMC app, you can go right in and sign up the Passover. We're calling it Passover of the Nations. We're asking everybody to bring an ethnic dish that represents their family, their heritage, the nationality they came from. We're going to give you guys some calls. We're going to make sure the menu's all working out. but you can do that on the LMC app, as well as signing up for Tabernacles. You can do that, put your information in there. We'll be contacting you. We'll get whatever deposits, or for those that just want to pay outright, we can do that. You'll be getting calls over the next couple of days, or we'll see you guys at service and take care of that stuff. And that's I know it's the 7th month. I know it seems like it's far away, but that thing is just going to roll around really, really quick, because already here we are in spring, and the Passover is upon us. So avail yourself of the things that we've got. Be part of Here Hidden Manna. Be part of our morning manna. And don't forget to join us tomorrow morning at 10:45 as we have our weekend evangelism message and teaching. We're just going to continue along these lines. We're going to talk more about what's going on in the upper room and the teachings that the Master gives, and I hope that you'll be blessed by it. Guys, don't forget, if you are not subscribed, to please subscribe. Hit that red button, hit the bell. You're notified every time we go live. And have a great, great rest of the day. Shabbat shalom to all of you. A peaceful, peaceful Sabbath. And we'll see you tomorrow. Guys, God bless and shalom.